I have said many times in many an intro on this channel, I am a huge fan of Warhammer. And you are to act surprised every time I say it because sometimes I don't know how else to intro my videos, so surprise. I love collecting, painting, and yes, even the act of building these little guys, and for the last 10 years I've been more than willing to pay what often feels like a hefty price tag for just that experience. And even though throughout that time I have consistently heard people complaining that Warhammer is too expensive, and especially that the quality of the product you get isn't actually that good compared to the heavy markup that Games Workshop puts in it, I've always kind of ignored those comments. Partially because I wasn't exactly spending like £500 every other month to build a new army, so I felt like my spending habits in the hobby were quite reasonable, and also that 50% staff discount was so nice. But mostly because in my mind, Warhammer plastic and even resin is a premium product, and a premium product means a premium price, right? Well, I want you to know that I am currently sat here making this video for you as a kind of emergency broadcast of sorts, because recently my entire perspective on Warhammer miniatures and what makes a good, fun, affordable and buildable plastic kit has been absolutely scooped up, flipped around and smacked down on its dumb, stupid face. And it's all because I built my very first Gundam kit. So please, dear fellow Warhammer fan, watch this video and let me show you what I experienced, because not only do I think I may have found one of my new favorite hobbies, but also because I think the act of just building one of these guys has fundamentally changed the way I look at my Warhammer minis now, maybe for the rest of my life. And the reason why is definitely something that you're gonna want to see for yourself. Whoosh. 3D whoosh, let's go. So TLDR, I built my very first Gundam kit, had a borderline religious experience, and now I think I might be obsessed with building Gundams, like new hyperfixation level obsession. I am down so bad for these robots, man. Disgusting. And I'm super excited to show you all of the awesome stuff I discovered, but before I start that, I just want to make it so clear, because I'm really worried that people are going to get the wrong impression, that this video is in no way an anti-Games Workshop, Games Workshop bad, stop buying Warhammer sort of video, not at all. I obviously love Warhammer and I fully intend to keep buying and painting and enjoying it and making content about it, maybe for the rest of my life, who knows? And if I'm being really honest with you guys, I've been a bit anxious about putting this video out, and I've spent ages trying to find the right wording for everything I'm gonna say, because I would absolutely hate to be incorrectly labeled as some kind of anti-Games Workshop hater, because I'm really not. But I feel like my love for Warhammer, and most importantly my 10+ years of experience with building and painting it, actually gives me quite a good perspective on maybe comparing it to other quite similar model kits. But even more importantly, I do feel like it should be absolutely okay, normal and fair to make comparisons and have these kinds of discussions around products that we buy, as long as we keep it fair, constructive and most importantly, kind. Healthy discussions and general awareness of different options and where companies do things better or maybe worse is how we improve the hobbies that we love, and it may even push these companies to make products which are better, so it benefits us as the consumer as well. So with all that being said, yes, this video is for you fellow Warhammer fans, and it's about why I think that you should give Gundam a try, because it's new, it's familiar, and it's honestly so fun. If you're not a massive weeb like me, then you may have no idea what I'm talking about when I say Gunpla or Gundam, so let me briefly explain. A Gunpla kit is essentially a plastic model kit composed of frames which you assemble to build a finished posable model. Usually these models are mecha-looking robots or Gundam mobile suits, which you may recognize from their popular anime franchise. But Gunpla kits are certainly not just limited to these Gundam mobile suits, with human kits, robot waifus, Digimon, other anime franchises, and food products also being very popular kits as well. But unlike Warhammer, there's no real gaming aspect attached to these miniatures. They don't have rules for a war game or anything like that. They're kind of about the joy of building and getting comfy in an evening and building something which is perfect or customized exactly the way that you want it. There are various levels of customizing and painting which people in the hobby seem to do. From full repaints, just like you would any Warhammer miniature, to simple panel lining, light weathering, and of course decals. Decals which look strangely familiar anyway. They even have their own version of Golden Demon called the Gundam Builders World Cup, where if you win in your region, they will literally fly you to Japan to take part in the main competition. And that is something I am going to be entering this year, so keep your eyes peeled because I will be making a whole video about that. Anyways, Gundam model kits come in various sizes and importantly different grades, which dictate their complexity, and you can see the grades on each box that you buy, with entry grade and high grade being the cheapest and more simple kits with less parts and less complicated builds, and real grade, master grade, and perfect grade boasting absolutely insane scale, posability, details, and features too. Your average high grade kit, at least in the UK, goes for around £15 to £30, which, despite being around 4 times the size, is roughly what you'd be paying for a centerpiece single pose 32mm miniature at Games Workshop. So of course, when it came time for me to pick my very first Gundam kit to build, I instantly skipped over the easy ones and went straight for a real grade kit because for some reason I think I can do anything with exceptional ease because I'm stupid. This guy is the God Gundam, renamed G Gundam due to fear of potentially offending Western audiences with the notion of a robot god, and like I said, he is a real grade RG kit, which set me back I think around $36.99, but when I tried to find him online later on for this video, I saw him for as cheap as £34, so that's pretty cool. This puts this kit at around the same price if we're comparing it to Games Workshop, which we are, to this guy, or a whole drop pod. But that seems like maybe quite a good deal, right? Like, especially the drop pod, because when you get a drop pod, you get 3 whole frames of chunky, thick Games Workshop plastic, right? So let's see how this similarly priced pretender ranks up next to the old faithful... Oh my. Yep, you are seeing that right. That is a lot of plastic rammed into this one tiny box. I was quite shocked as well. There is a color instruction booklet, 9 full plastic sprues, 2 smaller sprues with just a few little bits on them, a bag of effect pieces, and a decal sticker sheet for all the details. And whilst the sheer amount of plastic that was stuffed into this box was admittedly pretty cool, it is by no means the most impressive thing that I want to show you in this video. Not by a long shot, trust me, it gets absolutely wild from here. If you love plastic miniatures like I do, it's gonna get crazy. Crazy. You may have noticed already, but there is something which instantly is differentiating these sprues from your classic Games Workshop ones, and that is the colors. And that's because most kits come with an array of intricately colored plastic components on the sprue just like this, so that when it's assembled, the model will already look accurate and completed. And you may be sat there at home like, yeah, that's pretty cool, but Games Workshop already do that, like their Underworlds kits and a lot of their beginner stuff is already on coloured plastic frame, so what's the big deal? Why are you making a fuss? Shut up, Louise, shut up. Well, no, you shut up, because what if these guys had sprues with different colours, finishes, and even clarities and hardnesses on a single injection moulded frame? That's right, on this single sprue alone there is blue plastic, metallic green plastic, metallic almost translucent orange plastic, and hard see-through plastic, just on one sprue. Like, what's going on, Japan? What kind of engineering wizardry are you trying to pull on us pleb Westerners? But if you don't think that's impressive enough, then I am about to blow your clean little Warhammer cotton socks clean off, because this kit has a frame with ball-jointed and pre-assembled mechanical moving parts on the sprue. This is kind of hard to describe, so let me just show you. So here's the sprue looking pretty normal, nothing too special, and then I clip off this little arm hand component, and yep, you are seeing that correctly. It's a pre-assembled ball jointed component which just comes right off the sprue. And even this isn't the most impressive thing I have seen. I've heard about kits with actual magnets built into the sprues, and look at this piece here. It's a pre-colored printed part which comes right out of the box. This technology here is so ahead of anything we've ever seen before with Warhammer, and honestly, it just feels so wild. Apart from the instructions being extremely clear and concise, which always helps, with coded and labelled areas being mapped out so you never need to spend 20 minutes looking for part 96, which for some reason isn't right next to 97, it may surprise you that building any Gundam kit, including the higher grades, requires absolutely zero glue. And these kits are entirely what us Warhammer fans would call push fit. Now, I don't know about you guys, maybe this is just me, but when it comes to Warhammer and I see the word push fit, it usually fills me with a bit of dread, because it usually means what I think it shouldn't mean, and that is a bit of a struggle. Even when I used to work at Games Workshop, I and my colleagues as well would openly recommend that people file down the prongs on their push fit kits to make them go together a little bit easier, which I feel is just not the point. And even then, the gaps left behind felt quite obvious, and they required a bit more love and attention to get them looking anywhere close to just right. So when I found myself here building my first Gundam kit and I was effortlessly pushing together these tiny little pieces of plastic, I was honestly stunned. The plastic pieces on this kit are so well designed that even the tiniest elements have a perfectly engineered tiny counterpart which they slot right into seamlessly. There was no struggle, no having to apply a weird amount of pressure to put parts together, which bends other more fragile bits of the miniature, and no messy glue of any sort. Everything just kind of clicked into place in a really satisfying way. But in order to get those super satisfying build mechanics to work, you kind of need to spend a lot of time focusing on getting your plastic parts looking perfect as you're assembling to make the end product as clean and as seamless as possible. And for me, I think that's where a lot of the joy in building this kit came from. I got to slow down, be really methodical and a bit of a perfectionist to get every single bit looking perfect, so my end result was perfect too. And I think that it's this obsession with perfection which also makes the Gunpla guys miles ahead of us Warhammer people with their hobby tools as well. When I was putting together my basic essential Gunpla building kit, I wanted to A, do it from scratch so that I could honestly report to you guys how expensive this hobby is if you're coming into it brand new. But I also went with, as much as I could, the cheaper options when it came to all my tools, because I'm new to this hobby and I didn't want to spend all my money on top tier items before actually knowing what I would use regularly. I picked up a cute pink cutting mat, a budget friendly craft knife, some weathering pencils, some panel lining pens, some basic sandpaper sticks, and some tweezers too, and honestly this whole kit didn't set me back a huge amount. But one thing I felt like I had to splash out on to really review the full Gunpla experience were the clippers, and not just any clippers, because I bought the clippers, the coveted blue God Hand plastic model kit clippers, which they were very expensive, oh my god. For those already into Gunpla, then you will know that these God Hand clippers are like the gold standard, most perfect and wonderful clippers in the world. And if you are not in the know, then let me tell you that yes, annoyingly, these clippers are really good, but so expensive. These clippers cost me an absolute whopping £55, making them more expensive than any of the Gundam kits I had bought so far. But I got them because they were like the one thing that every Gunpla person was like, you're gonna need these clippers, they're the best clippers ever, and I want to be able to report back to you to say if they're worth it or not, so you can make informed purchasing decisions yourself. So why are these God Hand clippers so fancy and expensive? Well, here's the difference. Regular clippers usually have two blades that pinch the plastic on each side to remove the parts from the sprue, often leaving a small pinchy shaped nub on your miniature that you might have to clean up, thus doubling the time it actually takes to do what you wanted to do in the first place. But these God Hand clippers, which Gunpla people call nippers, and I kinda hate that, I don't know, the word just makes me gag a little bit, they have a single blade which presses against the other blade, which is actually a flat surface, which means a more precise, closer cut with less pressure on the plastic, making an overall cleaner finish on your miniature. But are these bad boys really worth £50 plus? Well, I'm quite a thrifty person, so spending that much money on just clippers was admittedly a little bit tough. But yes, they are extremely good clippers. And with Games Workshop clippers already feeling quite expensive at £31, I don't know. These clippers do feel like a premium product which actually pays off if assembling beautiful and clean miniatures is something that you love doing. Anyways, back to the model actually coming together, and beyond it just being a delight to assemble between the easy push fit and my lovely new clippers, the model itself is just so extremely cool and most notably incredibly well engineered, which I think is something I was told would blow my mind the most coming into this hobby as a Warhammer fan, and yeah, the people who said that were 100% correct. Like the piston armor at the back of the leg here, which moves in and out in such a satisfying way, and the shoulder pads which move around so you can kind of peek on the mechanical parts on the inside. The chest piece moves up in two pieces, revealing this cool, clear power core sort of thing, and the backpack is actually its own fighter plane which you can pose and display separately, and it has a tiny cockpit and even a little hinged window and a little seat on the inside, and you can dock the whole thing into the back of the Gundam, and I was just having too much fun here at this point. I had to calm down a little bit. After around 6 hours, yes, 6 hours of just building one kit, I was finally finished making my first ever proper Gundam model. And now it was time to do the next best part, which was playing with it. I mean, posing it, which was so much fun, and the pictures that I took came out really awesome, and I'm basically now in love with a tiny little robot model, and I guess that's fine. After I had finished my first Gundam, I kind of decided that I was a little bit too scared to fully go in and try panel lining this miniature because I'd spent ages on it and I didn't want to ruin it with what would be my first attempt at trying a brand new hobby skill. So obviously I decided to pick up another one to practice on. The other kit that I decided to pick up to practice on was this time a high grade Gundam, which if you remember is like the step below a real grade, so not as complex as a real grade, but it only cost me £16. At the time of filming this, I think it's for some reason a little bit more expensive where I bought it from, but look, thankfully I have evidence that when I bought it, it was only £16, so yeah, trust me. Anyways, back at Games Workshop, £16 would buy me a pack of cards, one wolf, or 10 shoulder pads! Yay! I fully expected this kit to be a lot less fancy than my more expensive real grade kit, but when I opened it, there was still a bunch of sprues, more than I expected for that price tag. And when it was complete, it was still insanely detailed and fully articulated. I decided to finally crack into some of my panel liners, which is another technology which hasn't quite hit us Warhammer fans yet, and yet again, I'm here to report that they were really cool. They're designed with a bunch of science that I don't really understand to essentially pour into recesses of the model in order to shade them specifically in those areas, and they really do the job. It's actually like magic a little bit, and it's so fun. All you have to do after you have lined all your panels is do a little bit of cleaning up, and then your model looks a lot more well defined. And if you want to pick them up for yourself and try them out on your own miniatures, and I really recommend that you do, then I will pop a link in my description box to the two that I used. I think I used like the Gundam pour marker pens and also the Tamiya panel lining kind of like pot. But yeah, I recommend trying them out because it's just so fun and satisfying to watch and do. So now that I have built 2 complete Gundam models at 2 different grades, let's have a little chat about my final thoughts on this brand new hobby. Despite the fact that on paper, Gundam and Warhammer do have a lot of similarities and maybe appear quite similar, I think now that I've experienced both, they do feel like very different hobbies because I think I'm getting a different type of enjoyment out of doing each of them, if that makes sense. Warhammer to me feels a lot more creative as a hobby because there is a huge range of miniatures to pick from, and that's one thing that Warhammer does have, which I do think puts it leaps and bounds ahead of Gunpla. And that in conjunction with a big focus of the Warhammer hobby being they come in grey plastic because you're supposed to paint them however you like, feels quite liberating and like you have a lot of choice and freedom both when selecting a miniature and then putting your own creative spin on the colour scheme and how the end result looks. With Gunpla, if you don't like big fighting humanoid robots, then you're gonna probably feel somewhat limited creatively. And like I said before, there are other kits that you can do, like more human kits and sushi, but still, robots are probably gonna be your bread and butter in this hobby, and if you don't like mechs and mech suits, then you may find yourself getting disinterested in the kits pretty quickly. Of course, when you have finished building your Gundam miniature, there is nothing stopping you from priming it and painting it and putting your own creative spin on it like you would a Warhammer miniature. It just seems like less people are doing that in the Gunpla hobby as they are in the Warhammer hobby. So if fully painting miniatures to completion is your thing, you may find that there's slightly less people to bounce your ideas off in this hobby compared to Warhammer. Additionally, to make a true comparison, it has to be said at this point, and maybe you've been screaming this at your screen the entire time, but Gunpla miniatures are not wargaming miniatures. They are fundamentally different things, and maybe quite fairly, you could say that I may as well be comparing Warhammer Space Marines to Lego minifigures. Like, they're completely different things for different purposes. Warhammer minis are usually designed to be stout and sturdy and to survive impact from things like rogue dice crashing into them or even falling off the side of a tabletop. And I don't think I would feel comfortable with my highly intricate Gundam model that I spent hours assembling being put through the same torture, at least not without a lot of super glue being used in the process of building it. However, with all that being said, let's talk about some of the things that these kits are doing right, which kind of make them dunk on Games Workshop plastic kits a little bit. If we're looking at just the amount of plastic that you get in a box in comparison to the price you pay for a box, and assuming that the plastic and its detailing and manufacturing is at least the same quality as Games Workshop, then these Gundam kits are a real eye-opener for any Warhammer fan. Even looking at the cheaper £16 high-grade kit, the box included 5 full, incredibly detailed sprues and almost 3 additional smaller sprues, and that's not even mentioning the fact that the sprues are coloured and the quality of the plastic and the fineness of the sculpted details is the same, if not better, than Games Workshop plastic. fantastic. A few equivalently priced miniatures that I found on the Warhammer web store are this Cyberwolf and this kit, which includes 3 little goblins, which I actually like quite a lot, and both of these are actually a little bit cheaper than my Gundam kit. But these are both pretty dated as models, which is fine, and I personally am a woman who loves an old miniature, but I unfortunately don't think I'm in the majority there. And these kits I'm using as a price comparison aren't even plastic kits. In fact, I believe, and I may be wrong, that they're everyone's least favourite Warhammer material, fine cast, which is renowned for not being the best quality. And again, I don't know why, but I feel so guilty saying this and making these comparisons because I love Warhammer so much, but at the same time I do want to try and be as honest as I can on my channel, and it's really hard to ignore that for £16 I put together something which felt as detailed and as high quality as a Warhammer miniature, but for that size and quality I feel like if it had the Warhammer logo on the front of the box I would probably end up paying double or even a lot more for the same miniature. But with all these comparisons out the way, I want to stop battling the two against each other from this point, because for a start they are very different hobbies, and more importantly I know what Warhammer is and what it isn't, and despite that I still know that I love it very much. I'm just starting to learn what Gunpla is, and whilst I've just started to get into it I think that I do really like it too, and I'm excited to learn more and continue to enjoy this hobby for what it is as well. Which for me I think is just another way that I can turn off my overworked anxious brain for just a little bit and focus on something deeply therapeutic, which also rewards me at the end of my hard work with something that looks and feels phenomenally cool and that I can be proud of myself for putting together. But I guess all I really wanted to say is that I discovered Gundam and I thought it was really cool, and I think that you should try it out yourself as well, because 2 incredible hobbies is always better than 1. And I am afraid that is all we have time for today. As usual, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for being rogues. I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Bye bye!